What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr. As always, no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making this edition of the show a part of your day and what we're getting into here. What the Philadelphia Eagles must do this upcoming offseason following Super Bowl 60. How can the Eagles get back to championship contention? Now, ESPN did their way too early power rankings for the upcoming year in 2026. They gave a 3-word description for each team's needs and basically what they need to do this offseason. And everybody agrees on what Philadelphia has to do here. As far as ESPN's way too early power rankings, do you have any issues with where the Eagles are? As you can see here to my right, they're not in the top 5. The Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, number 1. The New England Patriots, number 2. And I hate how sometimes we do that. Of course, the two teams that play for a title are defined as the two best teams in the NFL. But after watching the New England Patriots in that Super Bowl, with how talent deficient they are on offense and how they are exposed, do we really think that the Patriots are the second best team in the NFL? I don't. In fact, the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Seahawks, I thought that was more of a Super Bowl type of matchup in a game that came down to the wire, was very high scoring and exciting. Denver Broncos come in at number 4. I wish Bo Nix would have had an opportunity to play in that AFC Championship game because maybe Denver would have represented the AFC in Super Bowl 60. Maybe that game would have been a little bit better. The Buffalo Bills coming in at number 5. Major questions with the new head coach in Joe Brady. The San Francisco 49ers at number 6. I like the ball club, but can they stay healthy? The Detroit Lions. What's going to happen with their new offensive coordinator? That's a big question mark. Eagles check in at number 8, ahead of the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 9. Really good season for Liam Cohen in year 1. And then the Green Bay Packers at number 10. And for the last couple years, I've been feeling like the Packers, it's going to be their year to break through. Yet, they never have been able to break through. Jonathan Gannon, now their new defensive coordinator going into this year. On offense, they have a bunch of talent. And I think that Green Bay could be a Super Bowl contender, but a lot of question marks around the Packers. So my first reaction with the all-two power rankings, are the Eagles too low? Just like what I was talking about with the Seahawks and Patriots being in that 1 and 2 hole, that's recency bias. We're prisoners of the moment. I think we're kind of prisoners of the moment right now, putting the Eagles all the way down at number 8. I know that this season was ugly. I know that the offense wasn't great. But this is still an Eagles team that has some of the most talent, if not the most talent, in the NFL, especially on defense where they're continuing to build. They have a star-studded roster on the defensive side of the ball that's very young. And on offense, Philadelphia definitely has some question marks along the offensive line. What happens with A.J. Brown? What happens with Dallas Goedert? Of course, Sean Mannion has never called plays. But if I'm banking on a team to be successful in rebound, it's Philadelphia because that's what they've proven to do over the last 25 years. As far as the 3 words ESPN used for the Eagles with what they have to do this offseason, unlock the offense. Here's what Tim McManus, ESPN Eagles beat writer, had to say about Philadelphia here. The most expensive offensive roster in the NFL fell flat last year, ranking 21st in points per game at 21.1, 19th in offensive efficiency, 48.5. They also had more 3-and-outs than any other team. Offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo replaced by 33-year-old Sean Mannion, the former Packers quarterbacks coach, with only 2 years of coaching experience. Mannion played for Sean McVay and is expected to bring a more modern approach to a system that has grown stale. There are major questions facing the group, though, including whether A.J. Brown will continue on in Philly or if the front office will feel compelled to trade him. We did get some good takeaways on the A.J. Brown front coming out of Super Bowl weekend. He went on Micah Parsons' podcast and said Philly is home. He likes some of the changes made on the offensive side of the ball, and he's looking forward to how the offense evolves. That's good. And a bigger question than A.J. Brown, in my opinion, is the future of this offensive line. Can Jordan Mailata bounce back? Does Landon Dickerson retire? Is Cam Jurgens okay? Does Lane Johnson come back? Videos just surfaced right before I was doing this show, and hitting that record button thanks to producer Chip of Lane Johnson doing some offseason workouts and already lifting, squatting a crazy amount of weight. So that's a good sign. As for those three words, though, fix the offense. This is what we know with what the Eagles have done so far this offseason, and this is before NFL free agency and the NFL draft, which is coming up at the end of February into March and April. The Eagles are going all in trying to fix this offense, and I applaud their moves because they're doing something different and they're doing something very bold. Here is a list of the new offensive coaches hired by Philadelphia. You have Sean Mannion as the new offensive coordinator. Josh Grizzard as the new pass game coordinator. He was calling plays for the Buccaneers last year. Ryan Mahaffey is the new tight ends coach and run game coordinator. Run game coordinator responsibilities belong to Jeff Stoutland over the last few years. And then Chris Cooper is the new offensive line coach. What do these coaches all have in common? All of them who we just talked about have either worked with Sean McVay or under somebody from McVay's coaching tree. Nick Sirianni's offense coming from Frank Reich is a completely different scheme than the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur system. And I'm excited that we're ushering in a brand new era of Philadelphia Eagles football where we could see some of these modern day, creative, innovative concepts that we know work in today's NFL. So this offense for the Eagles will look a lot different. But the big question is, how does it get fixed? Here's some offensive line targets that I really like. I don't expect the Eagles to be big spenders in free agency at the skill position spots outside of maybe tight end. But I would like for Philadelphia to perhaps bring back Dallas Goedert. Do you go after a Kyle Pitts? The Eagles value tight ends, and so does the McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur system that can block. Well, Kyle Pitts can't block. Now, he's a crazy athlete at 25 years old, but I do expect Howie Roseman, because this has always been the case for the Eagles under Jeffrey Lurie since the turn of the century when Andy Reid was the ball coach, to invest into the offensive line. Can you make a trade for Mekhi Becton to bring him back if he gets cut by the Chargers? Because is he a scheme fit for Mike McDaniel? I don't think he is. If he becomes available via trade or in free agency for the Eagles, I look long and hard at bringing Becton back the big ticket. Isaac Seumalo, former Eagle, different scheme, of course, going to be a free agent. Do the Eagles look at a familiar face there? Rasheed Walker played under the Green Bay Packers. If you want to improve your offensive line with him and you have questions about the tackle spots, do you go the route of Rasheed Walker? Jack Conklin, a little bit too old for me. How about at the center spot, though? With what Todd Monken was doing, with a lot of RPOs and read options, outside zone stuff, it's a different offense than what Sean Mannion is bringing to Philadelphia, but Linderbaum is an excellent run blocker who can get out in space and move very well. He's definitely, by far, the best center who is set to hit free agency. So those offensive linemen become interesting targets, perhaps, for the Eagles. Now, coming up next, what are we going to see from Sean Mannion to work toward fixing the offense? Those three big words right there. We'll get to that here in a moment. But first, Valentine's Day is coming up this weekend. We have been able to sell a bunch of these shirts. And if you're still looking for something to get for your significant other, girlfriend, wife, partner, or you want to get something for yourself, if you're married to the game, you can get these sweatshirts and these shirts available right now. Eagles Now Valentine's Day gear. A lot of people have purchased these so far because we started plugging these 2 weeks ago, and we've been sending these out all across the country. We now have a Shopify page here at Chat Sports. Everything is so easy. You put in your shipping information, we'll get it to you ASAP. So chatsports.com/EaglesVDay. You can either get a sweatshirt or a shirt married into this Philly football. Maybe she didn't grow up an Eagles fan, but if she married into it, she's married to the game in being an Eagles fan. Chatsports.com/EaglesVDay. Get your Valentine's Day gear right now. All right, Sean Mannion, as we know, the new offensive coordinator going into 2026 for the Eagles. 2 years of coaching experience, has never called plays before, and he was playing as recently as 2023. This is a bold move that I really like for Philadelphia. And in being at the Super Bowl all week, talking to people around the NFL, a lot of people are applauding this hire by the Eagles because it's different, it's bold, but it has an opportunity to really work out for the Eagles. What are we going to see from this Mannion offense? Well, let's start here. Foundational elements from the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur system. And we're seeing this system all across the league. We are also going to see more under center play action. The offensive line philosophy working off of that, having Jalen Hurts under center more often, and just the technique element of offensive line play is a big reason why Jeff Stoutland didn't want to come back. What he has been taught, who he learned under, it's a completely different offensive line philosophy, and it's different offensive line coaching than what we've seen Stoutland do compared to the McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur system. And so you're going to see differences there, and there is going to be a period of adjustments made and a period of feeling it out for these offensive linemen, especially a Jordan Mailata and a Lane Johnson, because all they know is a Jeff Stoutland-led offensive line group. Also under Mannion, we will see more pre-snap motion and outside zone. I love this for Jalen Hurts. I love it for Saquon Barkley. And if this offensive line can rebound, given the emphasis that this system puts on running the ball and being balanced, I think that Saquon can have a monster year, but I think life is going to be made easier for Jalen Hurts. Here's why. Because we're going to see sequencing from a play calling standpoint and a lot of layered concepts. And some of these reads for Jalen are going to be limited to one side of the field. That's not a knock on Jalen. That's making the game of football easier for the quarterback, where you could have a route go into the flat, and then you could have a corner route that is layered beyond that. Maybe even a deep shot on a vertical where when Jalen Hurts looks to the right side of the field, he's going to have three options in a layered concepts type of point of view for him. There's also going to be an emphasis on running the football. Kyle Shanahan does a lot of things creatively, and you see a lot of window dressing pre-snap to try to alter the eyes of the defense. Manipulate the eyes of the defense is that buzzword. And while a lot of that is sexy, modern day, and creative, the backbone of Kyle Shanahan's system is actually being able to run the football. This goes all the way back to Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak, and we see it with Clint Kubiak with what he did with the Seahawks and what he's going to do with the Las Vegas Raiders. Look out for Ashton Genty to have a big 2026 with him calling the plays and designing the offense. Mannion will also move the pocket for Jalen Hurts. At times, Hurts has struggled with this. Other times, we've seen him have success with making throws on the run. Again, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period here. And then this is the biggest thing. So often with this Nick Sirianni, Frank Reich, Kevin Patullo offense, Kellen Moore, we saw it with Brian Johnson, but at the end of the day, it's been Sirianni's offense. It is leaned on and relied on special players getting open. And that's a credit to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert with how good they are. But this also goes back to making life easier for your quarterback, but scheming wide receivers and tight ends open with play calls and play designs that allows them to get open, make throwing lanes easier for the quarterback, and allow these wide receivers to pick up yards after the catch. The Eagles' yak numbers this past year were awful. How often do we see Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua running wide open with no defender nearby? I'm hopeful we see some of that with this Eagles offense in 2026. And then going back to what I was just saying with Shanahan, creative personnel groupings. And last year, this Eagles offense became so disjointed. There was no play calling feel. There was no play calling flow or rhythm. It was a disjointed offense. This offense naturally becomes less disjointed. And I can't wait to see what the man here to my right and Sean Mannion does with Philadelphia here this year. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is Philadelphia Eagles. Now we're going to continue to bring you top-notch coverage right here on the show, and the grind doesn't stop.